All right. We'll just give it a couple more seconds to give folks a chance to come on. But for those of you who are here already, welcome to our webinar and happy School Garden Week. It's Tuesday, the second day of School Garden Week. And today we're celebrating with this educational webinar on getting some produce from school gardens to cafeterias. So, um, welcome to School Garden Week. Just a quick overview of School Garden Week in case folks aren't familiar. The goal of School Garden Week is to celebrate the awesome work that's being done in school gardens all around Minnesota. There are a lot of benefits to school gardens. They provide a lot of benefits to students, staff, surrounding communities, and there are some awesome school garden champions that we want to shine a spotlight on this week. There are a ton of different ways to celebrate School Garden Week this week. You can do plan garden themed events. You can do a short lesson. Maybe this week you are getting some plants, some seeds in the ground. There are super short or longer activities you can do. Tons of different options. Our School Garden Week webpage is a great place to start if you are looking for some last minute lessons or activities. And if you do have celebrations, we would love to know. You can feel free to let us know in the chat or send your celebrations to me via email. I'm probably the person that has been sending you all of the emails about this webinar and School Garden Week. So we would love to know how you're celebrating. So far, as of yesterday, when I created this presentation, we have more than 70 schools and early care centers who are registered for School Garden Week and have plans to celebrate in one way or another. And we have more than 10,000 students, actually more than 11,000 students this year who are scheduled to participate in School Garden Week celebrations, which is a really cool number to see. So School Garden Week is an exciting time, and we're excited to celebrate today with this awesome webinar. Today's webinar is about getting produce from school gardens into cafeterias. We've got some awesome presenters here today to talk to us a little bit about food safety and then what a garden to cafeteria program looks like in practice. In case you aren't familiar with garden to cafeteria programs, there are a ton of benefits, and it's a great way to expand the school garden program that you might already have, or maybe you're starting one from scratch, and this is a great component to incorporate into your program. Garden to cafeteria programs are awesome. You get to have students experience basically a full food system from seed to lunch tray with a garden to cafeteria program, which is super awesome. Studies have shown that garden to cafeteria programs lead to increased fruit and vegetable consumption. This comes partly because of a sense of pride that students get when they get to grow their own fruits and veggies and then they get to eat them. They're more excited about eating the things that they grew. Um, Garden to cafeteria programs are also a great way to strengthen what we call the three C's of farm to kids: classrooms, cafeterias, and communities. And like I said, a great way to promote a sense of pride in students. So first, I just want to pass it to Annalisa Hultberg, who is a University of Minnesota Extension educator. She's going to talk a little bit about food safety in school gardens. So this is a important topic and thing to consider if you are starting a garden to cafeteria program. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and pass it to Annalisa.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Izzy. And thank you um, for having me today. I love being a part of these conversations to make sure we can all have great school gardens at all of our schools. I've presented at MSNA about this and other areas. So I will present some ideas, but also as you have questions or thoughts or just how this applies in your gardens, feel free to put that in the chat. Love to hear from you. Um, so I know that some of us have been, how about you put in the chat, have you attended a food safety training of any sort? I generally work more with fruit and vegetable producers, those who are growing fruit and vegetables on a commercial scale, but the topics are the same. So if you have attended a farm food safety training, let me know in the chat. So those who have will know what GAPS stand for. So that's my second question. What do GAPS stand for? Somebody who has attended a training or not attended a training, what do you think GAPS stand for? Kate, you can't answer. That's not allowed. Good agricultural practices. So, good agricultural practices are a set of voluntary practices that apply to the harvesting and washing and packing and holding of fresh fruits and vegetables. And these principles reduce the risk of foodborne illness associated with the consumption of those fruits and vegetables. So, not eliminating the risk in any way, but minimizing those risks to an acceptable level so that everyone feels comfortable eating the fruits and vegetables and doesn't become ill from that consumption. So, the reason why this becomes especially important with fruits and vegetables is there's not a kill step for some. So, that cantaloupe there is a delicious fruit that we are going to be eating raw, and there isn't going to be a kill step. So, in the kitchen, our meats, a lot of our proteins might be cooked. So, if there was contamination during that production, that cooking step is really good to kill off some of those potentially harmful bacteria. But we know that we're eating a lot of our fruits and vegetables raw. A lot of us have salad bars, which is a wonderful thing. We're really encouraging students to eat a lot of that. Also, we're serving children. So, immune compromised populations are more susceptible to foodborne illnesses. So, if there was some sort of a bacteria that could cause sickness, a pathogenic bacteria, on some lettuce or on that cantaloupe and it was on a salad bar, if you have a fully functioning immune system, if you are an adult, it might cause a little stomach distress for children or the elderly or those who have other immune issues that might make their immune system not fully functional. It can be very serious. And so we don't want that, obviously. Also, it's not possible to completely wash off fecal contamination if it's present. So we think, well, we're going to wash these fruits and vegetables, right? And we are in the kitchen before consumption. We should be eating these fruit. We will be washing these fruits and vegetables. But the reality is, germs are very sticky, meaning that they produce this biofilm outside of themselves to make themselves protected. And it's this protective layer that allows them to not be washed away. And because of that, they can stick in those tiny little nooks and crannies in that netted melon, for example. They're so, so small that we wouldn't see them. They would be fully washed, it would look clean, but because they're so small, they could be hiding in there if that contamination was there from the beginning. And we only need a very few of these pathogenic organisms. For some, like E. coli, pathogenic E. coli, only 10 cells to make us ill. And that photo on the bottom right is the head of a pin. And there's roughly 1,000 or maybe even more, depending on how you kind of pile the bacterium up, but 1,000 E. coli there on the head of a pin. So, or many more. They're very, very small. Obviously, we can't see them with the human eye. So bacteria in general are really good sometimes, and they're kind of neutral, but they can also be pathogenic. So it's those pathogenic ones that can cause illness that we're worried about here. To be clear, dirt isn't the enemy. We're happy about going out, getting dirty. That's a part of our goal here, right? But also with that is that there could be fecal contamination because, well, there's wildlife, there's people, there's all kinds of things, there's pets. And in their poop, is sometimes these disease-causing organisms. Also, liability could be potentially an issue. So I've definitely worked with school districts over the past that have said we have thought about food safety, we have a food safety plan, and therefore our school gardens are more sustainable, they're better run. And if we have questions from the school board, from community members, from parent staff about kind of our practices, we're able to say, yep, we've thought about that, we've addressed it head on and thought through these processes. And it just makes everybody more comfortable with the process. Also, just definitely could be tied to all kinds of other goals that the school has. Nutrition education, just kind of general organization amongst the students as we build up their professional and kind of scholastic endeavors, entrepreneurship, businesses, food science. It's all kind of tied to that. So the things that we're worried about here are the biological hazards primarily, and these are the pathogenic bacteria, parasites, viruses. Chemical hazards can also be an issue. These are generally kind of outside of what we think about in terms of food safety, primarily because the biological hazards can grow. Like bacteria, if we have a small amount of bird poop, if given the right conditions, if it's warm and wet, those numbers will grow over time drastically, and a small problem can become a big problem. So for public health, we're thinking about the biological hazards, and then of course physical hazards as well. Splinters, sand, glass. We don't want that in our produce as well that's going on in the salad bar. So the pathogenic bacteria and the viruses and the parasites, they come from poop. Sometimes it's actually kind of fun to do food safety education with children because we get to talk about poop, and what kid doesn't love that, right? Number one, kind of principles, I'm going to do a real brief overview of some of the most important principles that I hope that you could pass on to staff or students at your school is just hand washing and hygiene. So you're a food handler when you're in the garden and you're harvesting. This is an act of community care. We are caring for our community and our peers and our friends when we're harvesting this food for them, when we want it to be wholesome and delicious and not make them sick. And if we don't wash our hands before we do that, we could maybe have some germs on our hands that could make them sick. So number one, we're going to make sure to wash our hands before we start harvesting. And some sort of basic food training, food safety training should be provided to everybody who's in the garden. And I do not mean an in-depth sit-down training. It could be as simple as having a sign and maybe a very brief one-pager with 4 main points on it that you just say, okay, let's make sure we're all on the same page here about these things. And then you just mention it. A sign like wash your hands. Also, this photo, I want to show hand washing on the back of a truck. You might not have a pickup truck in the middle of your garden, but just to show that it does not need to be fancy. There's nothing expensive about this setup, but it's perfectly adequate. So I know many of us probably know that we're washing our hands before harvest, after using the bathroom. And these are things that you might go through with students as well. They often know to sing ABCs twice or 20 seconds. If you have hand sanitizer in the garden, you can use it if you want to, but it isn't a replacement for hand washing. If we have dirty hands with the presence of soil, that sanitizer would just sit on top of the soil and not do anything. So that sanitizer is a sanitizer. It's meant to sanitize, not clean, which are different things. So if your hands are fully clean, if you are at the doctor's office, they might come in and use hand sanitizer. That's because their hands are very clean to start with. There's no soil on their hands. But in the garden, we probably have a lot of dirt. So my recommendation is don't have the hand sanitizer there because you might think, maybe I'll just use it instead. But really, hand washing is the best way. So here's a photo, and this was taken by Kirsten Saylor, and it is just a simple setup on a table, paper towels, so some sort of single-use hand drying mechanism. Can be cloths if you want to launder them, free-flowing water, a place to catch the water, and some soap. That's what you need. You can put that water onto some lawn or the road or even like a fruit tree or something. I would not water my vegetables with it, but if you want to put it in a someplace, doesn't have to go anywhere fancy. Let me know if there's questions, just pop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll keep on going. Here's a picture of that hand washing. Um, don't worry too much about, the fact that you're going to have to turn off the nozzle with your clean hands. If you want to, you could pop out a paper towel first, or you could have someone there giving them to the children. So they've got that paper towel waiting for them. So after you go ahead and turn off that nozzle and that water has stopped flowing, I'm going to pick up my paper towel and then I'm going to use that to turn off the nozzle and then dry my hands and then throw that away. It's that would be ultimate best practice, but don't let that stop you from just washing your hands. That's the most important thing. We have designs on how to make this portable hand washing station that I will make sure everyone gets to. It is important to not be sick. Again, you are a food handler, so if someone has vomiting, diarrhea, those kind of things, they really shouldn't be, well, they're probably not at school, but if they're just not feeling well and you can tell they're not feeling well, they should not be handling the produce. Moving on to water. So it's just simplest in a school garden scenario to just use the potable water sources. So that would be a well that has tested to meet drinking water standards, or municipal water, city water. Don't use surface waters like ponds, lakes, streams. Those waters might be used on a kind of a farm scale for irrigation. I personally think that that would be a little bit too cumbersome and risky in a school garden scenario. But that brings me to rain barrels. So some of us might be using collected water from a roof or from another structure. And I think that that is a really good learning opportunity for kids. But again, this water is not potable. And some research has shown that it is actually really far from potable for both chemical and biological contamination. So chemical from the perhaps roofing material from the roof, and then biological from the animal feces that might be on that roof. So you can use this collected water on any non-food items, any of your pollinator gardens, your veg or your the flowers there. Or if you had things like fruit trees, again, that would be a very low risk use because there's not a way that that water is going to touch an apple in the apple tree, for example. So it has to touch the produce to be a risk. It's not taken up by the roots. If you have questions about that, let me know. But I think the simplest is just to use that water for not produce that won't be eaten by people. Okay, moving on to harvest. Again, we're going to wash our hands before harvest, and I recognize that that is easier said than done when you have 30 third graders potentially. So my suggestion is to just kind of think through the timing. And if it potentially there is 2 hand washing facilities, so that doesn't become a huge time sink. If they want to wash inside on their way out, that's totally fine too. But they do need to wash their hands before harvesting. If there is other tasks, planting, just being in the dirt, that's totally fine. I would say harvest first if it's at harvest time, so that we're kind of doing the work that we need our hands to be clean first. So our hands are nice and clean. We're like scrubbing in for surgery. We're good to go. We're harvesting our delicious kale and we're putting it into a clean bucket. And then we might go do whatever else. So of course, this is just kind of best practice. Is every student going to do that every time? No, that's okay. Don't let the enemy, the perfection be the enemy of good. Just say, okay, this is our general policy. There might be some few outliers. That's okay. Don't eat or taste while you're harvesting. And this can be tough if you've got strawberries, if you've got, delicious sun gold cherry tomatoes. But while we're harvesting for our community, again, that hand to mouth contact is just too risky. It's also just likely that the top of the tomato or the strawberry is going to land on the ground. And it's just not a very sanitary thing to do when we're still going to be harvesting there later. So if you want to taste to see if things are ripe, maybe send out a scout, have somebody go gather those items, come on off to the side in somewhere, and then taste it. and then wash your hands and then go harvest. So it's not that you can't do that, just kind of think through the process. So again, somebody might nab a tomato while they're harvesting, but in general, you're trying not to do that. And then looking for signs of animals before you harvest. Generally, there shouldn't be a lot of fecal material. Are we going to see some bunny, pellets? Sure. But if we're seeing a lot or a lot of deer damage, a lot of deer poop, then somebody has to take note of that and be sure to not harvest those things that might have direct fecal contamination. Because all poop has the potential to carry contaminants. There have been pretty wide scale foodborne illness outbreaks traced back to wildlife. But I will say there was a lot of fecal contamination. One little rabbit isn't going to probably cause a whole foodborne illness outbreak. For our harvest containers, think about using plastic or stainless steel, whatever you've got, maybe from the kitchen or your own. A 5-gallon bucket is just fine, but just making sure it can be cleaned. This is, something that I might use in my home garden. Totally fine. I'm going out to grab, I think that was actually from my garden, going out to grab some peas. That's just fine. I'm making that decision for my own family. But when we're doing it for our community, I wouldn't harvest into that because, well, I can't clean it because it's wicker. Thinking about supplies, so you've got your bins, and they might be stored in the school kitchen, or they might be stored somewhere else. I'm not saying they have to be stored in the school kitchen, but I will say that the school kitchen knows food safety. So that might be a great place to start. But if that isn't a good place for you, then you can find another spot. But definitely being in coordination and in communication with that school kitchen coordinator will be important. And other supplies, there might be, the rubber bands or the wash tubs, whatever it is, somewhere secure, just not kind of just sitting outside. So it might be in a shed. That's just fine. During harvest, keep your totes off the ground when possible. This is, again, not a hard and fast rule, but especially if it's been rainy or if you have heavy soil, the bottom of those totes can get really dirty. And then we might be putting them on a table. And then we've just got more soil in the washing area and more cleaning to do. So doing your best to either put them on a garden wagon or just holding them. I mean, maybe at the scale, just holding them is just fine. Sometimes people flip over. I doesn't really show, but this right picture is a tote that's on top of another one flipped over. So that's kind of a strategy that some folks use. Okay, so again, with the animals in the garden, I would have a no pets rule. If you've got staff or families coming in for a garden day, that's fine, but they should not bring their dogs into the garden. Maybe on the edges, that's up to you, but this is food that we're growing here for our community. If you have the ability to put up fencing, that is really helpful, especially for deer. Not as helpful for smaller animals. And again, looking for that evidence of animals before you harvest. And students should know what to look for. So sometimes we do things like I would show them a picture. So this is a tomato. Tomatoes are often trellised. And on that trellis, what might be perched? A bird. So if you've got a bird, what do birds do? They go to the bathroom just like us, and down falls their poop. And would we harvest this? And you could have a conversation about the fact that no, we don't harvest this because remember, we can wash off the poop and we can't see it, but those microbes are so small that they can be stuck in any of those little nooks and crannies and they could remain there. And if we eat this tomato on the salad bar, this could make our friend sick. So we're not going to harvest this. I would recommend telling the students just to look and then don't pull it off. And then I would have a staff member just come and grab those and compost them. Again, with chewing too, if it's a carrot or the top of a beet that has a lot of chew marks on it, or any chew marks, don't harvest that. Just leave that be, and then that goes in the compost or whatever you want to do with it. But I would not bring that into the cafeteria. So the tools and equipment are food contact surfaces. So just like our plates and everything else we use in the dining area, we also need to clean and sanitize our totes and tools and equipment. So this just means generally keeping them clean. It does not mean that every single time they need to have this big disinfecting step or any time or anything. Cleaning them with soap and water, spray if we've got a dirty toe, we just harvested potatoes, we're going to spray it with clean water to remove that visible dirt. Then we're going to scrub it with a brush and some sort of detergent like Dawn. Spray again with soap with water to get rid of the soap. And then occasionally, probably not every time, use a sanitizer like a bleach solution to spray on there and then let it air dry. That's it. And if the kitchen does this stuff for you, totally fine. But occasionally, the things that we're harvesting with and into should undergo these steps. And a bleach solution, just so you know, very simple, 2 teaspoons approximately, depending on the concentration. But if it's a 6.75 sodium hypochlorite, which is very common household bleach, get it without any scent or thickeners or any of that jazz. Put it in some water, in a gallon of water, and then put that into a spray bottle. Good to go. You can use that as your sanitizer. Washing produce. All produce should be washed before it's eaten, but that might happen in the kitchen. So some produce will break down really quickly if it's washed. So if you're lucky enough to be growing fresh berries, we don't wash any berries. I would not wash any tomatoes. Again, the kitchen or whoever's going to be eating them will wash them right before they eat them, but don't wash those things um, out in the garden and then put it into storage. If you've got root crops, likely they're going to need to be rinsed. Greens, depending on if it's rained, for example, definitely might have some sand on them, so they might need kind of a gentle bath. Things like melons, peppers, green beans, cabbage, zucchinis, they're not going to store very well if they're washed with water. So my recommendation would be assess if they really need to be washed. If they're just a little bit dusty, you can just do kind of a dry brush. You can use like a clean towel or a brush and just kind of brush it off. Obviously, something like green beans might be tougher, but I would have a conversation with my kitchen if this food was going into the cafeteria, and I would say, hey, our green beans look pretty clean, and you're going to wash them. Is it okay if we just give them to you like this? And in my experience, as long as a lot of actual soil isn't going into the kitchen, generally that is just fine. And to be clear, a lot of produce that you buy at the grocery store has not been washed. It is grown in a way where it stays very clean, and then you are expected to wash it. So just have that conversation and pass along that for food safety. Sometimes it's better not to wash because it will last longer. And also if we put our green beans in a tank and there's some poop on one green bean, well, that tank might spread it around to all the others. So sometimes it's best to just let the kitchen deal with the washing. But this is a picture of some greens being washed, some spinach. So this is a very simple, you might have a cart and you might have a clean tote that you got from your kitchen, and you've got a colander. That's it. That's just fine. And here is a produce and hand washing area table. It's nice to have kind of a designated area. Just kind of some general reminders there. Remember to start with the clean containers, always washing our hands before we get into the washing process. Always use potable water for that outdoor rinsing. Spray tables are really nice. That's that upper picture there. If you're able to do that, I've got designs on how to build that pretty affordably. Basically, it's just a table, so you spray it and the water just goes straight down. So for food safety, it's generally better to just have that single pass, we call it, where the water touches at once and then goes away, as opposed to a recirculated water. The bottom right is what we would consider a recirculated or batch system. That water looks a little funky, right? So you need to change that water more frequently. Okay, wrapping it up, the garden food safety plan is kind of like gathers all of your thoughts and rules and policies around food safety, and it's based on your risks. If you don't have a risk, you wouldn't necessarily mention it, but we have a nice template that you can use so you don't have to think through everything. But it should be developed by someone at the school who understands the operation. You describe your practices so that if I was a community member or a parent and I said, I feel like kids are going to be eating this produce and I have some concerns about the food safety aspects. Can you tell me what you do for food safety? You could say, yes, we can tell you. Please read this document. And then they can read this document and then come to you if they have any questions. So our template is just kind of goes through, it's designed to be a manual and a template. So the manual kind of describes what I just described, but a little bit more depth because I didn't touch on everything. For example, using manure and soils, those kind of soil amendments, those kind of things. And then it has a template that you can fill in, and it is a Google Doc as well. So you can do that electronically. Take home messages. Most folks need to learn a little bit by attending either a food safety training, asking me a question, asking other extension educators or other folks a question, or just doing research on your own. Sometimes we're not real good about understanding what the actual risks are. The secret that I will tell you is it's focus on the poop. Don't worry so much. Hair, for example, not great to have in your lettuce. It's not going to cause an outbreak. So really kind of shifting your mind to think about where is the poop coming from, that is what we're trying to control here. Think about a few key actions to reduce risks that you can take on your farm or on your garden. Keeping it really simple, don't overdo it. It doesn't need to be a big scary thing. And really just staying positive. I've had a lot of interaction with students who have thought about this and really actually liked it. They've said, oh yeah, they kind of take ownership of it. And that is it from me.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Annalisa. I'll maybe pause for a minute or so to see if anyone has any questions for Annalisa about her presentation. And then Annalisa, maybe I'll have you paste a link to that manual in the chat too, so folks can access that.
I'll do that. Yep. And I'll stay here. So
Great. Anyone that has any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. And if not, I think we'll move on to our second presenter. We have got Tristine Straczynski. Is that how you say your last name?
It is. You did
Okay,
well.
amazing. Okay. Um, so we've got Tristine said it once and I can't do it again.
It's all good. It's all good.
Straczynski
The kids at school
from
call me Ski just to kind of keep it simple. So,
Oh, I love it. Well, she is from South High School, part of Minneapolis Public Schools, and they have got a pretty great garden to cafeteria program going on. And so we will have her present a little bit about their program, and I will share her presentation here. And Tristine, you can feel free to just give me a verbal or visual cue when you want the slide to be advanced.
all
All
right.
right.
So I'll give you a thumbs up.
Great.
I think we'll probably work the best. So,
Great.
Uh, our first picture was one of our interns. So South High School is a school here in Minneapolis. So we're urban setting for our agriculture. We run a garden to cafeteria program. We have a bunch of community partnerships that you'll learn about today. You'll learn a little bit about how we use our site and district for support. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the strengths and challenges that we've come across, as well as a couple of resources that you guys can take away with you today. All right, you can just skip through these intro slides or whatever. Those were my parsing for making sure that I had all the pieces there. All right, so a little bit about me, why I got into this as a teacher is I'm a plant enthusiast that was raised by farmers. I had a family of farmers down in southern Minnesota. My mom and my grandfather taught me everything I need to know about, growing food. And I have learned more about sustainable land practices and stewardship practices. And so when I was asked to be a part of the gardens, I jumped on it and I've been, learning and growing with more sustainable food growing techniques as opposed to what my ancestors had taught me. One of the cool things about South is that we have a little bit more space than most people think in an urban setting. And so we utilize every single ground space that we have available. So we have 13 unique gardens here at South. And a variety of school departments utilize our gardens every single year. We have teachers bringing students down into the garden spaces for growing and planting during our growing season. And then we do on-site vegetable growing every single year, and we serve that food in our cafeteria. We have a lot of different uses of our space, so understanding your school's use is going to be really impactful for your guys' success. We have an all nations program that uses it, science department, special education uses it, art department, and community education all use our garden spaces. And in an urban landscape such as what we have here in South Minneapolis, we need to be able to understand our access to certain resources and also our social impact, as well as understanding the community use in addition to any kind of pollution that might come about our garden spaces. And so finding that balance between all the different uses is really, really key to making things sustainable. And so land use and stewardship is like a key to my heart here. We need to understand our light, our water, our crop yield, our soil quality, landscaping that was already established here prior to me starting to help with the garden. We want to talk about waste, not just like plant waste, but for composting, but we also have to think about community waste because our spaces get used for lunches and we don't want trash and stuff being brought into our garden space. And then we also look at pests and disease. And so we have a number of site and district supports that we use to help balance this out. Our program is really started by our Minneapolis Culinary and Wellness Services Department. That's a district-led department, and they have really promoted school gardens within our district. And they also help support us in bringing in other community partnerships. Principals and on-site staff are key to making this run for your schools. And our district leads help get things going and provide ongoing support and collaboration as needed. One of the things in collaboration that I think is really important is that you have to have somebody on site to really know the gardens and being able to communicate with all of the different people who use this space. Community gardens, because of our uses here means that we have to regularly talk to engineers. I'm the garden lead, so engineers, if they have construction that happening, they come and talk to me. Administration is part of it for planning purposes. Our finance department helps track our money because we do make money from our garden that we then reinvest for more fun things like seeds and the things that the kids like. And then, our teachers, I have to coordinate often with our teachers, and our cooks, especially, and our secretary, just all those different types of communication happens when you're running a school garden. In our district, our resources like seeds and cooking kits we get for promotion. We've gotten some grant money. They help us manage our financial accounts. And then any type of community contract has to go through like our legal team. So we regularly work with other departments, the facilities and finance, and that's, of course, our culinary department here at South. And then our community resources that need management and extra coordination. We work with a number of third parties. Some of those third parties are managed with individual teachers who bring them in to support their individual classes. Other third parties are bigger and help provide us with some workers and some other opportunities for students. And we have families and city workers that also are part of our team. So being able to communicate with all of those is part of my role here as our garden advisor. And then one of the things that thinking about who we partner with, well, we are fortunate being in a larger city. We have the city of Minneapolis help with a lot of our funding. We work directly with Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board for ongoing summer maintenance in our gardens. I think one of the reasons why South's Garden is so successful is because of that partnership with our Parks Department. Community education is another part of partner with us, and we do after school programming to help with the garden maintenance as well. And then we have other third parties, so I'll name them here after a little bit of some of the organizations that we've worked with. But all these different organizations help us with grants. Our district, as all schools know, we're limited on finances, so there's not a lot of extra money floating around in a school district. So we do well to try to find grants in different places to help support what we need. Some of these district grants that we got is specifically for like community education grants. So we got new plants and new systems of shelving and lights and stuff to start seeds indoors a lot earlier so we could have a productive garden in the summer. And so we get those materials through these grants. This is our first year that we're going to be really doing a fundraiser. So we're going to be using our interns this summer, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. To help start plants for a potential plant sale and donation because, as much as we can seed save, which we do a lot of, if we want something new or if we run into some issues, we still have to purchase some new equipment and some new seeds and stuff for use every year. And then, of course, we get donations from our community. So people who grow plants, we've partnered with people who know different farmers and different growing groups in the area. And so we will get sometimes extra plants or seedlings that will just be donated to us, which helps us cut down costs. And some of the partners that we partner with is working, like I said, with individual tree or individual teachers, but then we have people like Great River Greening or Tree Trust of Minneapolis Edible Boulevards we've all partnered with to do different projects in our gardens. U of M Master Gardeners and Pollinate Minnesota come out. We have a beehive on site that our science department, uses regularly. We have Hennepin County deliver us their zero waste program, deliver us fresh compost. We'll be getting a chip drop once construction's done, so we do all of that stuff, and that gives us some more free materials. Our partners with Beacons allows us for after-school programming to allow students more connection with the garden outside of their classes. And, our community partnerships provide us training opportunities for our students and staff. And like I said, material resources, and then they also provide a community connection that is really helpful for our students. Now, what do our partners do? Like I had mentioned before, annual maintenance is key. So our partnership with the Parks Department helps with maintenance, us being allowed to hire some students. We do compost and wood chip delivery, establishing new gardens. We had a volunteer group establish some new gardens. We get donations for tools and plants, like I'd mentioned. Education and programming is coming through, like Great River Greening comes out and works with our All Nations program and talks about plant medicines and things like that. And while that's not used in a cafeteria setting necessarily, that knowledge encourages the students to seek more and they get into growing their own food. And then they come to me and we work in the gardens together. We also do a lot of cultural vitalization with our All Nations program in our gardens. And then we do, like I said, outreach and employment. So with our program, I think why South is really successful is because we get paid students. We pay our students in an internship program. I get to hire about 4 students every single summer, and this will be our 3rd year doing this. And that is money we get through the city of Minneapolis through a grant program, and then it's operated and funded, and all of that back end work is done with the Parks Department. So when I come to it, I just get told, "Hey, we get to hire some more students." So I go, "Great, give me the applications," and I send it out to our high school students, and we get like 25, 30 kids wanting to apply every single year for 4 spots on our team. And having that small group of students learn while they're completing the garden tasks is really important. But that paid labor is needed for growing the type of quantity and stuff that our cafeteria needs. Also, staffing is getting paid through this. So I get part of the grant money in order to provide hours in teaching in our gardens and operating the gardens in the summer. You know, trying to find and run a program this big without any type of funding is going to be a challenge. And so if you are a smaller school, you don't have access to funds or a lot of community grants that are available, let's say in like rural Minnesota. My thing is to encourage folks, don't let that stop you from starting a garden. Just start small. Don't make your garden so big that you need all this manpower in order to run it. Start small, and then you can slowly build on it. Because once you get going on your gardens on the regular maintenance, that's kind of the summer when teachers are off and nobody's around the building. That's when everything grows, and that's when we need to put our hands in the dirt the most. So having a plan on how you're going to manage things in the summer, along with other needs of that garden, is going to be really critical for your success. And like I said, without paid labor, a regular stream of volunteers is what would be needed, and that can be harder to come from, or come by, especially in a school when you don't have as many staff on site in the summertime. And then school-based staff is really important to having the knowledge behind what we're building in the garden. And we work between the organizations. So we do site coordination. I talk with the cooks to help coordinate kitchen needs. I'm scheduling students and for tasks and different deliveries for different things. Facilities help with regular site access. My people at the district have the policy knowledge. They connected with people at the U of M and had all of the great things like what Annalisa was talking about. I've got, my record of trained harvesters that I have here. I have my South Harvest log that we weigh everything on. And then most importantly, I have my food safety. As far as my food safety plan. And so we utilize everything that Annalisa spoke about before to help us run this garden, and that's what helped made it so successful. Some of the things that are important to know too is city ordinances. We have an edible boulevard space that we started establishing just for social justice food access and community use, and so we still follow safe handling, food safety when it comes to those gardens, and we tried to rope things off from animals with the idea, and we did soil testing through establishing that. So we want to make sure that we understand all the rules that are with our city for these garden spaces. And then we have grant-based funding and city stipends, like I had said, to help us fund it. Some of the challenges that you might encounter is, again, if you're a volunteer run operation for your school garden, you can decrease your costs extensively, by using volunteer labor. However, inconsistent labor really slows down projects, and they can limit the scope and size of what you're trying to accomplish. We did have a bunch of volunteers come out and establish some newer gardens. Now, they're not food gardens, but they were other gardens, and we had about 300 people establish these gardens with us and do a bunch of painting in the building one year. And trying to manage all of that would have been a headache. So if you are a teacher who's not getting any stipend to run this, be mindful of your time and how in depth you want to get involved in some of this. Or maybe if there's somebody who has strengths in volunteer organization, you can outsource some of that. One of the other challenges is we're very weather dependent. Even with our internship program, I have to plan for indoor tasks as well as outdoor tasks because the kids, if I can't work outside, they don't get paid. We don't get paid, they don't get the work done, right? And so I have, over the last few years, managed to do an indoor garden so we can start seeds. And you'll see one of the stations behind me here that we got just as a donation to help us start seeds inside. And so we practice food safety, we practice all of those things, even when we're inside doing the garden, as we're starting seeds. So we want to reduce, like Annalisa was saying, the poop aspect of everything. So we do practice safe handling of our seedlings and things of that nature too. Just getting in the regular habit of washing hands and such. And then resource organization, that is one of the hugest, I think, things to manage the time, the money, to manage all the materials. And so getting donations is great. It costs a lot less to get things donated, but you still have to have a place to store them. You still have to have a way of, organizing them. And so you have to be mindful about what you're asking for volunteers or what you're asking for donations and be very intentional with that. And this is a list. I can put the links in the chat for those that are interested, but these are some of the links for some of the programs and how we access things. So Yeti is our Minneapolis and Parks Youth Initiative. It's a youth employment training and initiative program that the parks have done. So through Team Teamworks, I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but that's who we use for our hiring process. And they've been phenomenal at helping us get some South specific interns. And then we have our Hennepin County, like we manage. MPS has a big site on school gardens that the district decided to put together for all of our schools. So our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools all have access to the same resources. And then, of course, U of M Extension Office is one of our big resources for teaching and learning for the students. And so we pull a lot of material from the Extension Office to help support our students' learning. And that finishes it for me. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to dive into the weeds.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tristine. That was really awesome to hear about your program. I'll pause for a minute to see if we have any questions come up in the chat. One question that I have personally is I'm curious what produce from your gardens ends up in the cafeteria. Like, are there things that you grow specifically for the cafeteria that, students love seeing on their lunch trays?
So most of what we grow, that's a great question. Most of what we grow happens to do with our salad bar.
Mm,
Because the kitchens, in talking with different cooks over the years, um, the kitchens have specific timings for ordering. With a district as large as ours, we have a very big culinary center that does a lot of food preparation and stuff. A lot of stuff is also cooked on site. But the on-site aspect of it, it's more manageable for our culinary people for doing just stuff in the salad bar. Depending on who you have for your lead cook, we have grown things like tomatoes. Zucchini is a big one. Um, we've done other types of squash, beans, cucumbers. We've done radishes. It all just again depends on the need, but again, when we're growing for our specific cafeteria, we have to grow in larger quantities. And so think about like
hmm
a size of a paper ream box. We would need to have at least one box full of, let's say, green peppers, right? In
hmm
order to meet the demands of our lunch. So
Yeah.
smaller schools can get away with doing smaller quantities of
hmm
produce. Something to fill, like maybe a 4 by 6 inch like bin to put into the cooler, for the salad bar.
Right.
But for a school as large as South is, where we have over 1,000 students in here, eating lunch and stuff throughout the day, we need to have a larger quantity. And so this year we're leaning more in because of the kitchen staff that we have. We're leaning more into more production quantity. So we're going to be reducing the number of foods that we grow, and then we're going to be increasing the quantity of what we're growing this year to better provide for that. But we have some really good ones that we like to just kind of do. One of the things that have been really helpful for student supports is when our cooks put a little sign on the salad bar saying "Grown at South."
Oh,
Then
that's
the
fun.
kids are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm eating food that we grew," and then they talk to their friends. And these are high schoolers kind of geeking out about growing their own food, which is really amazing to see. So, any type we support we get from our cafeteria is a really amazing when they can highlight the foods that we grow on the lunch counter.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. I love that. Love hearing that. Well, I haven't seen any questions come through in the chat. I did see one person who was just requesting some of the links that were referenced, and I just put those in the chat so folks can have access to those. Um, of course, if anyone on the webinar right now has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can put you in contact with either Christine or Annalisa. Thank you both so much for being here. It was awesome to have you and take some inspiration from your expertise and take some knowledge away as we continue through School Garden Week. We've still got a couple days left. I just wanted to point everyone in the direction of some relevant resources. Our School Garden Resource Hub has a lot of great resources related to starting school gardens, funding, recruiting volunteers. If you don't have a large budget, which most school gardens don't, we've got some resources on low budget gardening. If you're looking for ways to incorporate education and teaching into your garden, we've got some lessons pulled there, as well as managing a school garden in terms of pests, compost, watering, all that fun stuff. This is a great resource. You can scan the QR code. And otherwise, if you just look up school gardens in Minnesota, it should be one of the first links to pop up. But if we've got no questions, I'll probably just let everyone go a couple minutes early. Thank you again, Tristine and Annalisa, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with the group here today. It was really awesome to hear from you both. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thank you everyone for joining, and enjoy the rest of School Garden Week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you.